So, welcome to another edition of SacTown Movie Buffs. Once again, I'm Kier, and this is Jason. We are back once again with another show. Today, we are continuing our top 10 list, and this year is our top 10, or this show will be our top 10 films of 1998, part one. So once again, like we do with most of our shows, we'll do our top, or we'll do our 10 through 6 on this one, and then you'll have to watch the second show where we do our number 5 through 1 with our honorable mentions. So how's it going, man?
Good. How about you?
Good, man. Things are going good. Things are going great. How was 1998 for you?
1998, like most years, there's a ton of movies I love. Because I generally love movies, but it was a little bit easier to do the top 10 for this year. I was going down the list and making notes of all the movies that I really liked. And there's, as always, there's a lot of movies that I really liked. But to me, this, as opposed to 95, 96, and 97, it was pretty easy to, I had 12 that I wanted to be in the top 10. So it hurt to cut out like 2 of them, but like the other years, it's hurt to cut out like 8 or 9 of them, frankly. So this was pretty clear, my top 10. Again, there's just a couple that kind of I wanted to be in there, but 12 is not 10. So how about you?
Yeah, different for me. This was actually, I thought it was a great year, to be honest with you. I gave 9 films 5 stars, which I think was more than I gave for 95 and 96 probably. So I loved a lot of films that came out that year. So surprisingly. Really love it. A lot of them are like
great movies.
Yeah, a lot of them are like just staples, you know what I mean? And this was probably the first year, I'll get into that in a minute, but this was probably the first year where I actually own all the films that we're going to be talking about. So usually I'm like, so that makes a big difference as well. So yeah, I think I own all of them. So, well, in my top 10 anyways, there's a few honorable mentions that I don't own, but still. Yeah. But there is a little hiccup with that, and we'll get into that in a minute once we get into it. But yeah, no, I thought it was a great year. I enjoyed a lot of films that came out that year, and like I said, there's a lot of 5-star films for me. Not a whole lot like on my all-time top 10, but a lot that would make at least my top 50. You know what I mean? So that's pretty dang good for me, anyways. So
cool
stuff. All right, man. Well, without further ado, man, let's get into it.
Okay. All right.
We kick it off with you, and you start off with your number 10.
Sure. My number 10 is There's Something About Mary.
Cool.
So this is a movie that I'm pretty sure everybody is familiar with. It stars Ben Stiller and Cameron Diaz. Ben Stiller, it starts when they're in high school. And Ben Stiller is kind of like this nerdy character who has a crush on Mary. Everybody in the film has a crush on Mary, pretty much. That's one of the jokes. But without getting too explicit, he gets a pretty painful injury the night of the prom. I think it's been a while since I saw it.
The Franken Beans scenario.
The Franken Beans. Yeah. So it kind of ruins his big night with her, and then he kind of obsesses, and then it picks up, I think, 10 years later, 10, 20 years later.
Like 10.
I think 10, yeah, because it starts in the 80s, that's right. Yeah. It came out in 98. So he obsesses over her that whole time, pretty much, and then I don't want to spoil the rest of it for anybody who possibly hasn't seen it, but it's a romantic comedy. This movie kind of came out of nowhere. I remember it was one of the biggest hits of that year by far. And when it came out, I remember I saw it opening weekend, and before anybody knew it was going to be this huge sensation. And it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. It's one of those times where I just remember having trouble breathing. I was laughing so hard most of the time. And everybody in the theater felt the same way. So I wasn't too surprised when it came out of, it kind of came out with not very high box office prospects, and it went on to gross like over $100 million, which is what you would expect, like, action movies with big stars to do. But this movie was a huge hit for a good reason. I think it's still one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. So that is my number 10 for 1998. There's Something About Mary.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love There's Something About Mary. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time. It's in my top 10 as well. It's going to be definitely up the list, probably in the second half of the show.
Okay.
But it's just a really just funny film, and every time I watch it, I just crack up laughing. It was actually just one of those just like great films. It's just so much fun. It's just so funny and just there's a lot of toilet humor, obviously, with the Franken beans and that sort of stuff, and and just a lot of a little bit, but no, it's just a great comedy. It's so much fun, and if you haven't seen it, I don't know what you're waiting for. Definitely, you should have seen that movie, years ago. But definitely go check that one out. It is a great film. So I definitely highly enjoy it, and like I said, I just everybody in there is like so funny and so good, and it's just it's got a lot of funny elements to it, not giving too much away about everybody being kind of like in love with her and that kind of stuff. So just really good stuff. So awesome, man.
Yeah. Cool.
Going back to me saying that I own all the films in my top 10, and I do. I just can't find one of my films. I have no clue where it's at. So it happens to be my number 10.
I heard a but.
Yeah. I don't know where it's at. I asked everybody around the house. No one seemed to have seen it. And I know that I had it because I brought it out a couple months ago because I was gonna watch it with somebody. I can't remember who, but I was gonna watch it with somebody, and I don't know where I misplaced it. I put it somewhere in my house, and I have no clue. So I spent like half the afternoon trying to track it down, and still wasn't able to find it. But without further ado, my number 10 is actually going to be, and this time I brought an image since it was the only one that I don't own. So, The Negotiator. The Negotiator stars Samuel Jackson, who gets involved in basically is being, in his opinion, framed for a murder and a crime that he, doesn't feel, that he's being set up, basically, in a sense. And with that, it's he ends up basically in a police station, and and basically is taking hostages. They call in basically Kevin Spacey as the negotiator to basically talk him out of doing, harming any of the hostages and that sort of stuff. Samuel Jackson also a negotiator as well, so it's kind of like negotiator versus negotiator kind of thing. So it's a really good power struggle. It's got a lot of good twists and turns. It does have some action as well, but it's mostly really good on the dialogue and stuff like that. And they have the SWAT team out there and the FBI and everybody trying to get into the building, and they're trying to meanwhile they're trying to uncover whatever happened and who did the cover up, who did the setup, is he guilty, is he not, did he do it, was he involved in this, that kind of stuff. So just a really good film. I've always enjoyed it, and I've always been a big Samuel Jackson fan. Just didn't, it made the top 10, but towards the bottom of the top 10, but any movie I put in my top 10 I definitely loved. So my number 10 is The Negotiator.
Cool. Yeah. I remember liking that a lot. That's one that I haven't seen in a long time. I probably haven't seen it in close to 20 years. But I definitely saw it in the theater. I saw it at least a few other times beyond that. I like it. It's one I completely forgot about, to be honest. No fault of the movie. I just haven't thought of that one in a while. And I know it was directed by F. Gary Gray, who directed Friday. And this was kind of his, I think this was his next movie after Friday, I think. And
I think so. Might be. I'd have to double check.
Set It Off. Set It Off was in between.
Oh, that's right. Oh, totally forgot. Yeah, definitely.
Like he was like on the way up, and then
I don't know what happened to him. Yeah. Those are 3 really good films back to back, and then I don't know what he did after that, but
I mean, the next movie that anybody saw really was Straight Outta Compton. Did he do Exit?
I was joking. I don't know what his next movie is.
I don't know either, but I mean, like, it was good to see him come back in Straight Outta Compton.
Right.
But again, that's been 5 years ago now. I mean,
yeah, and that was a huge gap from '98 to and he might have made some other good films in between. I just can't remember them off the top of my head. So.
He might have made something, but I don't think he made anything. I don't know. Who knows? But I do remember liking The Negotiator quite a bit, but I haven't seen it in a very long time. So good choice.
Cool. Number 9, sir.
All right, number 9. My number 10 was There's Something About Mary. So this is also a comedy technically, but it's just a little bit on the darker side, and that is Happiness. So this is a very, very, very dark movie about a very, very, very dysfunctional family. And it's one of those movies that it's kind of a hard movie to recommend a little bit.
It is.
Because, yeah, it's a dysfunctional family movie, but you've never seen a dysfunctional family movie like this. It's got a great cast. It's got Philip Seymour Hoffman in it, Laura Flynn Boyle, Dylan Baker is in there. But that was the second film by Todd Solondz, who seemed like he was, again, kind of like F. Gary Gray, seemed like he was
way up,
yeah, because Welcome to the Dollhouse was his first movie, which was great. Happiness was his second movie, which is even better, I think. And then after that, he just kind of went into a rut, I think. He just started making the same kind of thing over and over. Even making, he made 2 more movies with the characters from this movie, but played by different actors, which I think is kind of a neat idea, but I didn't really care for either of those movies. Well, actually, Wiener Dog was okay. No, that was Welcome to the Dollhouse. Anyway, I love Happiness. I think it's a masterpiece. I wish it had come out on Blu-ray. I don't think this DVD is even, I think it's one of those that's even not anamorphic. So, but at the same time, I can kind of see why they're not putting it on Blu-ray, because I mean, one of the main characters in this movie is a pedophile, and I think it was very controversial at the time because, I mean, it doesn't condone what he's doing, but it doesn't really, it's kind of hard to say. He's just one of the other characters in the movie, and what he does is kind of it's kind of on the same level with what everybody else does in the movie. Which is a lot of bad things. There's a character in there. There's a serial killer, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, who I'll just say, yeah, he makes crank calls, and he's
obscene crank calls.
Yeah, and he's. It's a hard movie to recommend. I only recommend it to people who like very, very, very dark humor. People who like movies like John Waters movies and stuff like that. I like those kind of things. Happiness, it got great reviews when it came out. Like, the critics loved it, but it's not something you would recommend to your family. I would say that. But I think it's a masterpiece. I watched it several years ago. It's been a while, but I watched it several years ago, and every time I watch it, it is a really great movie. But you will be offended, I guess you could say. If you're okay with that, and if you can roll with that, and go into some dark places, watch Happiness. The title is kind of ironic. I'll just put it that way, because the characters in this movie are not very happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
Well, the good and the bad is that that's actually my number 9 as well.
All right. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So my number 9 is actually Happiness.
Yeah.
It seems like it works out like that every once in a while, where we have the same numbers at the same time. So it just kind of really kills 2 birds with 1 stone, pretty much. So, so I could just tell you my number 9 and go right into it. So awesome. I agree totally, man. I love Happiness. It's a really, really dark comedy. Definitely not for the kids. Definitely not one you want to watch with the family around Thanksgiving kind of thing. Like I said, none of the characters are really good people. They all have their quirks. I mean, obviously, being a pedophile is probably the worst of the worst. Well, serial killer's pretty bad too.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Although the serial killer character is not in the family.
Right.
She's kind of ancillary to the family, but still. Yeah.
But still very, and it's really a bunch of different stories that are all kind of, because you don't even realize that they're all one family initially, you know what I mean? Because of the way that the story unfolds. So it's really like a bunch of different mini stories. They're all one family, but there's also other characters that are, like you said, kind of connected to the family that aren't necessarily in the family, if you will. So, because it's really, I would say it's 3 sisters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it's really 3 sisters.
The pedophile character is not in the family either. So
no, he's not. No, exactly. So it's really the 3 sisters, and everybody else is basically connected to those 3 sisters in one way or another. Married to one, dating one, that kind of stuff. So, and so they're all connected to basically those 3 sisters in that family, basically. Right. But no, it's a really funny film. I'm not gonna say fun. It's a really funny film. I definitely enjoy it. I laugh every time I see it. It's got one of the best opening scenes I've ever seen with John Lovitz.
Oh my God! Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
they're like going through a breakup. And that's basically how the scene begins, how the movie starts, and it just from there, it's all kind of downhill from there. So and like it's one of those movies where none of the characters are that likable per se, because they're all kind of bad people. They all kind of have their own quirks in their own way, but at the same time, you don't really hate any of the characters either. You know what I mean? And the way that, like you said, the controversy about the pedophile is they do it in a way to where you're not like, you don't even really hate him. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of weird. It's a weird feeling. You know what I mean? And you're like, because the way that they do it really tongue in cheek, and they don't show necessarily anything really bad or graphic or anything like that in the film, in that capacity. But you everybody knows what's going on. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those just. Comedies, very dark, probably one of the darkest comedies that you're probably going to see. One, that's really funny. That's this dark, but I enjoy it. So
yeah. I don't know if anybody's going to want to race out and watch it after hearing us talk about it, but it really is like just it is funny. It is got some powerful moments. It's got the soundtrack's good, the acting is fantastic, the writing is good. If you can go some dark places, you will enjoy Happiness. It's a really great movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, clear that up. We're right on to number 8.
Number 8 for me is one I know you don't care that much for. Dark City. Yeah. I don't think you do. I can't remember, but
I do not.
I love this movie. It is one of my favorite science fiction films. It stars Rufus Sewell, who I say basically too much. He wakes up in bed and there's a dead body next to him, and that's how it starts. So automatically it's a murder mystery, but there's so much more to it than that, because he wakes up with no memory of who this person is or who he is, and he's in this. He doesn't know there's anything weird about it, but the city he's in it's always night. Time stops every once in a while. There's these creepy guys with bald heads and top hats, and not top hats, but fedoras. But the visual design of this movie is just amazing. It's directed by Alex Proyas, who also directed The Crow. So The Crow had some of that kind of same dark city at nighttime in the rain kind of feel that this movie has. But I think Dark City, I like The Crow. It's a good movie, but to me, Dark City is like his masterpiece for sure. And I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but the movie is about this character kind of exploring this world and finding out who he is and where he is. That's one of the main keys, because the whole time you're watching it is like, is this like a really stylized, weird version of Earth, or is he not even on Earth, or what's going on? I like those kind of movies where you're kind of trying to piece together the mystery the same time as the main character is, and you only learn things as he or she learns them. But I think it's just the style of that movie is amazing. The cinematography, the art direction, the acting is good, but the main draw is the look and the feel of it. The music, Jennifer Connelly is in it. She's one of my favorite actors. She's really good in it. Kiefer Sutherland is also in it. He's very good. But William Hurt is also in it. But I think it's one of my favorite science fiction films. I don't really want to spoil any surprises for anybody who may not have seen it. But if you like science fiction, definitely check out Dark City. That's my number 8.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say that I hate science fiction, but I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a huge sci-fi geek in that sense. It's not
calling me a geek here.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, we're all very various levels of geek, yeah. but no, I can't. I don't remember a whole lot about that film. I just remember not being particularly that interested in it, and not being particularly that impressed by it. Of course, it's been 20-something years since I've seen it. So, I just don't remember it being a huge being a huge fan of that film. And and for me, to be honest with you, like I said, science fiction movies, I don't dislike science fiction movies. I just, if there's a genre that I'm not necessarily gonna love, it might lean towards science fiction movie, with that and musicals. So I also don't like musicals, which we don't. But yeah.
So you would really not like a science fiction musical, is what you're saying?
I would probably run for the hills if there was a
Wow.
movie with a science fiction musical.
I
I don't know.
can't think of any, but now I really want to see a science fiction musical.
That would be interesting.
That sounds awesome.
You'll probably think of one, and I actually love it. No, I'm just
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah. So yeah, it's like I said, I can't comment too much on it because I can't remember it. I just don't remember being that interested in it all the way around. So, but I haven't seen it in 20-something years, so it's hard to say.
So we'll go check it out again, then. Cool.
I probably definitely won't check that out. Well, moving on, we're still at number 8, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my number 8 is actually a film that if you had asked me back in 1998, it probably would have been like my number 1. But, of course, as time goes on, things change, things drop. Well, I don't know if it would have been number 1, but it definitely would have been very, very high up the list. So it just kind of, I watched it recently, so it kind of dropped a little bit on my list. I still give it 5 stars, still love it, but it's just not number 1 anymore. So,
okay.
And my number 8 is going to be Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. So, yeah. When I saw this movie for the first time, I loved it. I think we saw it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just loved it. It reminded me so much of like a Pulp Fiction type, and obviously it's Guy Ritchie, and this is he's been kind of thought to be kind of a Tarantino-esque ripoff artist, whatever you want to say.
Oh, yeah.
Highly influenced from Quentin Tarantino in that sense, with the time shifting
a little bit.
And the storytelling and the different characters and that sort of stuff. And so Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is a British film. I think it's his first film. I think
so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a British film. It's basically about a group of kids in streets of London or somewhere in England or whatever, and they get involved in like this high stake. One of them is got a knack for gambling, and gets involved in this high stake poker's game, we're not giving too much away. He ends up losing quite a bit of money, and so they basically spend part of the film trying to raise the money because they have a certain amount of days to come up with the money. Otherwise, his father is going to lose his bar. They're going to basically go in and take the bar from his father, his father actually played by Stain. And Jason Statham's in this movie as well. He's probably the only other major character that, before anybody even knew Jason Statham was. So before he became like this big action star or whatever, he was in this movie doing no action. No, but yeah, he's not doing martial arts or anything like that in here. So don't expect that from him.
Yeah.
But it's one of those movies where it's kind of hard to explain because a lot of different stories within stories going on in here. There's a lot of twists and turns with all the different characters, and they get involved with, a lot of other shady and nefarious people. So it does have a lot of action. It's an action comedy, if you will. So it's got a lot of very, very funny scenes in there, but it does have some good action scenes also. And it's got like a lot of different twists and turns that happen with the story. So it starts off as kind of like this gambling movie, but then it turns into like these movies where they're trying to like pull off all these other types of jobs and in order to pay them back, and they're looking for different ways to come up with money and scheming and that sort of stuff. And the person they owe money to, he's a very rough gangster, and he's involved in a lot of other stuff, and he gets involved with other characters as well, and they all kind of intersect in some kind of way. So just a movie I've always loved. Definitely one you should check out if you like action comedies and you like film, if you've seen any Guy Ritchie's films, you might like this one as well. And like I said, it is very Tarantino-esque, if you will. So that's probably why I kind of gravitated to it so much, because I like that type of style in films, the blending the action and blending the comedy as well. So just like I said, that's my number 8. Great film.
Cool. Yeah. I remember going to see that with you back in '98. I do remember it was like a sneak preview. The tickets were free. I can't remember how I got them. I think maybe my brother gave them to me or something. I don't know. But I know it was like we had to drive to Sacramento, and we both lived in Yuba City at the time. So it was like an hour drive. I don't think you had ever heard of it. I had only barely heard of it. It was playing at the Sac Inn, which was like a really cool independent theater that unfortunately it's been torn down for many years. But it was a really nice theater. And I remember that was a really fun night. I remember we both loved the movie. And I even remember we discussed, because it has such a long title, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, we actually discussed
the nickname.
I think, yeah. Are we going to call it, when we address this movie, we're not always going to say the entire thing. Are we going to call it Lock, Stock, or are we going to call it Two Smoking Barrels? Yeah. And I remember we agreed that night that Two Smoking Barrels sounds cooler.
It sounded cooler, but then we ended up just calling it Lock, Stock.
It's easier to say. It's easier to say.
Right. I do remember that.
It's pitchier. Yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah, I really loved it that night. It's one that didn't really hold up for me so much when I watched it on video later on, and I haven't seen it in a really long time. But I do. That was a really fun night, and it is very, very Tarantino influenced. Some might even say rip-off of Tarantino, but it's got its own style, and it seemed, at least that first viewing, it seemed really fresh just to hear it done with British accents, I guess.
Right.
So it's a fun movie. It didn't hold up. I didn't give it like my highest rating anymore when I saw it later on video, and I haven't seen it in probably 20 years. So. But yeah, it's a fun movie. It's not going to be in my top 10 or anything like that, but that's definitely one of my favorite memories though that night. Yeah. It was super fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool.
All right, well, we're already on number 7, man.
All right, cool. Number 7 for me is Run, Lola, Run. Yeah. Now this is a cool movie. This is one of my favorite films. It's just a fun movie. It's a quick. It feels like a 90-minute movie. Yep, it's 81 minutes long.
It's short. Yeah, it's really short.
It's just a quick, fun movie. It's a German film. It essentially is about this woman named Lola who gets in
who runs.
Yeah, who runs basically. Yeah, that's the whole movie just about. He gets into a jam, or no, her boyfriend gets into a jam, and he needs money quickly. So she has to get money to him quickly. And that's basically the entire plot. And the cool thing about this movie is that it replays what could happen 3 times, essentially. So it's almost like a video game. It feels like a video game because her first plan doesn't work. She dies. Second plan doesn't work also. And it like resets like a video game every time. It's like playing a video game where you die and you have to start over and do things differently. And that's pretty much it, but that's what makes it so much fun. I mean, it pretty much is 81 minutes of just action, running. There's a bank robbery in one of the timelines. It's just a really fun movie. It seemed at the time like it was going to launch the career of the director because he had such great style. And it didn't really happen. He made some more movies that were pretty good, but nothing ever came close to Run, Lola, Run. So if you're okay with some subtitles, if you can read, which anybody who reads should be okay with subtitles, because it is in German. But if you want to just watch an 81-minute movie that is nothing but just action and cool music and cool camera work and great acting, watch Run, Lola, Run. That's my number 7 for 1998.
Cool stuff. Yeah, I like it. I don't love it. I didn't love it as much. Even back then, I didn't love it as much as you did. But I haven't seen it in many, many years. It does have that video game element where it kind of resets itself and then goes over again. But I can't remember a whole lot about it other than, like you said, it's just a really fast-paced, high adrenaline, might cause some anxiety type film. And that's pretty much the bulk of what I remember about it. But I do remember it's a very fast-paced film, and it breezes by really quick as well. So with 81 minutes, of course. So yeah, definitely one that, I would, advise someone to check out if you're, interested in a really fast, fast-paced, heavy adrenaline type film, then this is definitely would be up your alley for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, my number 7.
Yeah.
My number 7 is actually going to be Another Day in Paradise. So, I just love this movie. Even the title of it says Bonnie and Clyde for the 90s. And that's pretty much the best summarization of this film. So it basically stars James Wood and Melanie Griffin, and there's also 2 other characters, Vince, I don't know, who cares? 2 other kids, basically. Hey. Nobody knows.
Yeah. Well, you never watched Mad Men. He's one of the main characters on Mad Men, which was a great show. He's one of the main guys. So there you go.
Yeah, no one knows. No one knows that guy's name. Let's put it that way.
Vincent Kartheiser. That's his name.
Yeah, well, no one knows his name or the girl's name either. What's her name?
Natasha Gregson Wagner.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. So see, nobody.
Yeah. Exactly. No. So basically, there are two teenagers, junkies, if you will. The two kids, or two teenage Vincent and Natasha. They're two teenage junkies, and he gets himself in a jam where he basically gets into he's stealing. They steal quarters and change out of like vending machines and that sort of stuff, and he ends up getting in a jam where he gets into an altercation with like a security cop or guard or cop or something of that nature, and potentially ends up killing the cop, and is on the run basically, kind of thing, and needs help. He gets beat up pretty bad in the fight as well, and then it comes in James Woods' character, who's basically kind of like him and Melanie Griffin are probably like the same couple that these two people are, but probably 20, 30 years down the road. They're a lot older, they're more experienced, so they do crimes as well, and they basically kind of take these two kids under their wing after that, and that's basically what they do. They do drugs, they do crimes, they rob people, they steal, they do that kind of stuff. It is just a really just violent, drug-fueled, sex-fueled film. And so it's definitely not one for everybody. But it's just, they're nasty people. None of them are really good people. None of them are really going anywhere that's going to be good. There is a little glimmer of hope at the end, maybe, but other than that, they're not really going anywhere good, in their lives. And like I said, it's just a really great film. I just enjoy the heck out of it. James Woods is just it's one of my favorite roles of James Woods, just because he's just so nasty and mean and just so he's very smart, and he knows how to get money and that kind of stuff, but he's a junkie, you know what I mean? And they're all junkies, they're all drug users and stuff like that. And so he figures out ways, because he's been doing it for so long. He knows different ways in order to score drugs or to get money and that kind of stuff. So he takes these kids under his wings, and they're all kind of doing the same thing he is. And but then obviously conflict and tensions happen between the four of them and that kind of stuff. And so it's an interesting dynamic as well as that. So it's got a lot of humor in it in parts. It's got a lot of action, a lot of drug use in there. But just a really, really good film. I enjoy the heck out of it. So that's my number 7.
Yeah. I really like Another Day in Paradise. It's one probably the lesser known movies. Pretty much anybody I know besides you has never heard of that movie, which is unfortunate because it's really good.
Or those actors.
No. Well, I don't know whatever happened in Natasha Gregson Wagner, but and I don't know why I remember her name, but Vincent Kartheiser is on Mad Men. Mad Men's great. But I love that movie. It's been a while since I watched it. It's another one that has never been put out on Blu-ray, as far as I can tell. I still have the same old DVD you do. So it would be good if it got a re-release, but nobody's ever heard of it, so who knows if that'll ever happen. But it's a really good movie, and also, it's Bonnie and Clyde for the 90s, but even more so, have you ever seen Drugstore Cowboy by any chance? Okay, it's very much, it's even closer to that, because Drugstore Cowboy is also about like kind of elder statesman junkies, Matt Dillon and Kelly Lynch, who take under their wing two younger junkies. I don't remember who plays the guy in there for some reason, but I know Heather Graham is the girl, the younger girl, and they knock over drugstores, they use drugs together, and even there's a character in Another Day in Paradise who dies of a drug overdose, and it's the same character in Drugstore Cowboy. If you look at the four characters who dies of a drug overdose, so it's even more reminiscent of Drugstore Cowboy, which I also like a lot. But it's a really good movie. It's got a great soundtrack. A lot of really good, like classic 60s soul and blues. And it's still a soundtrack that I listen to quite often. It's a really cool movie. It's not quite in my top 10. It's definitely in my runner-ups, but I do like it a lot. James Woods is like, he really chews up that role, and Melanie Griffith is really good. And Vincent Kartheiser, and Natasha Gregson Wagner are also really good as the younger characters.
Cool. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we're already on number 6 already. So
Cool. My number 6 is The Big Lebowski. So yeah, this is a movie that it's really, really interesting the trajectory this movie has had, because it came out and just bombed big time. And a lot of people saw it back then and didn't really know what to make of it, myself included. Now, I was already a big Coen Brothers fan. At that point I already loved Raising Arizona and The Hudsucker Proxy, and Fargo had just come out before this. This was their follow-up to Fargo, their Oscar-winning movie, and people just didn't know what to make of it. It is a really weird movie. It's a really funny movie. It's really impossible to describe almost, but Jeff Bridges, in I think probably the most Jeff Bridges-y role he's ever had, plays Jeff Lebowski, who gets tangled up in this really complicated, bizarre mystery when some people break into his apartment and pee on his rug. Basically, that's what kicks off this huge mystery, and it's become like a really popular cult film, which is really interesting because, like I said, it just sank without a trace when it came out. But it's people, there are festivals, and conventions, organized around this movie, and it's easy to see why now. Like when I saw it originally, I liked it, but I didn't love it. But it's one of those movies that the more times you watch it, the more it kind of comes alive. And there are so many cool little details in this movie that I've watched it so many times, and every time I notice more things, more jokes that are just kind of buried in there, like little Easter eggs that you don't find until you've watched it, 10 times or whatever. But it gets funnier every time. John Turturro is amazing in this movie. John Goodman, Steve Buscemi, Philip Seymour Hoffman is one of the funniest characters in this movie, and he's only in there for like 5 minutes. But it's a really special movie, and I think pretty much anybody who's watching a movie review podcast has seen it, so I don't need to go into that much detail. But The Big Lebowski is a great movie, and it's my number 6 for 1998.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was one of the ones that I didn't quite jive with it. It didn't really do a whole lot for me personally overall. I know it's like a cult classic, and a lot of people love it now. But I was one of the ones that didn't care for it initially, and I've seen it since then. I've seen it more than once, but I really love John Turturro's character. I thought he was the funniest character in there personally, but it's weird. It's I can't say I was bored with it or anything like that. It just wasn't one that I really cared for necessarily. So I didn't think it was overall that funny. I thought it was more weird than funny, and it just for me it just didn't do a whole lot for me personally. So. But yeah, that's it. Didn't hate it or anything, but just it won't be in my top 10 or my runners up. So
yeah, it's disappointing.
Maybe for you, but not for me. My number 6 will be one that probably doesn't need a whole lot of introduction because it's another one that everybody and their grandma has seen and everybody knows. So is going to be Saving Private Ryan. So, so obviously everybody knows this is, won pretty much all the Oscars that year of 98. Everybody loves it. Tom Hanks stars in it, and basically it's a war movie, World War II, I believe, or one?
Two.
Two. And it's a team of men basically looking for Private Ryan, who's had 2 brothers that passed in the war, and they're trying to get the third one home safely. Yeah. And so it's got a lot of action, it's got a lot of stars, it's got a lot of great acting. Matt Damon's in there, Tom Sizemore's in there, it's really good. Edward Burns is really good in there. It's got a lot of just a really good war film. Not my favorite war film, but it's probably one of the more popular war films. I guess all big war films are popular, but definitely, one of the more popular ones. One that I definitely enjoy. Like I said, it's in my top 10, so I love it. I still give it 5 stars. But just a great film. Like I said, don't have to spend so much time on it because everybody that's seen it and almost everybody's heard of it. And if you haven't seen Saving Private Ryan, then I don't know what you're waiting for. Definitely go check that one out immediately. So,
oh yeah.
Number 6 is Saving Private Ryan.
Cool. Yeah, it's a masterpiece. It really is. It's on my list too, but it'll be in the second half.
Yeah.
But it's a great movie. Kind of like the Big Lebowski. It's one that got better for me the more I watched it, because I remember when it came out, I thought it was really good. But I remember, I was 20. I was Mr. Film Critic. So I remember I kind of wanted to knock on it a little bit because it was so mainstream, and I was like more into like because there were two big World War II movies that year. There was Saving Private Ryan and The Thin Red Line. Mm-hmm. So me being like, Mr. Artsy movie critic, I was like, well, clearly The Thin Red Line is better, because it's Terrence Malick and it's all pretty and artsy and everything like that. And I love The Thin Red Line, but which one do I watch more often? Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember, like, I had problems back then with the intro and the outro. Like, I thought it was a little too sappy, too Spielbergy, but even that works for me now, But I think it's just a great movie, and it's got one of the greatest opening sequences of any movie ever made, I think. And the rest of it's pretty darn good too. So yeah. It's I don't know if it's Steven Spielberg's best movie. I'd have to think about it, but it would be way up there for sure.
Yeah, it's got to be at least in his top. Well, he's made a lot of films, but I would say at least in his top 3, top 4, somewhere. Yeah. So I'd have to really think about it myself. I don't think it's my favorite film of his, but it's definitely in the top 3 or 4 probably for me.
Yeah. So it's a perfect movie. It really is.
He's got a catalog of work that goes all the way back to so early 80s.
But it also has Jurassic Park 2 and The Terminal in it, so we can't forget that.
Yes, this is true.
Which are not the best.
No, definitely not. But that's the problem when you have a huge body of work. You're going to have all these great masterpieces and all these other films. I mean, I guess that's why it's like people like Tarantino or Nolan, they only make a film every few years, because they can really just hone in on whatever film they're making, you know what I mean? They also write their own films too. I don't know, Steve Spielberg writes all of his own films or anything like that, so I don't know.
I don't think so.
So it takes them a lot longer anyways, because I feel like they put more into it because they have that, so they have a less of a chance of having films that are shitty or crappy. Sorry.
I'm shocked.
So, but yeah, other than that, that was good.
Yeah.
Great list, man. Definitely looking forward to seeing the top half. I kind of have some idea what some of those movies might be, and
same here.
We might have some of the same ones probably,
Yeah.
But you never know. Might be surprised. Maybe those ones make our honorable mentions. Who knows? Or maybe they don't even make our list. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, I was pretty sure Men in Black would be in your top 5, and I was pretty sure Scream would be in your top 5 on those years, and I was like, they were runner-ups. What do I know?
Yeah, you're definitely wrong. Definitely wrong. No, good stuff. Well, cool. Well, another great show, man. Definitely had some great picks. I'm really looking forward to the second half and kind of seeing, what some of those films are on your list, and talking about some of my top 5 as well. And then obviously the runner-ups I always like the runner-ups or the honorable mentions, whatever you want to call them. I mean, I don't need 20 of them like you have, but I always like them because a lot of times those are the films that a lot of times they're not great, but I tend to watch a lot of those honorable mentions more often than say some of the ones that are in my top 10. You know what I mean? Yeah, because they're just fun. They're just fun films. You know what I mean? That's all. Like I love Saving Private Ryan, but it's not a film that I watch all the time. I probably haven't even watched that one in 10 years. You know what I mean? Because it's so heavy. You know what I mean? Versus. Yeah, and long, and that's also the other plus with that as well. But something that a runner-up like a Scream or something like that, I can watch that almost any time. So it's just how it works, I guess. So
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, once again, we just thank everybody for continuing watching. Hopefully you like this show. Hopefully you continue to watch our next one, the part 2, which we should have uploaded again here for you shortly. And then once again, as always, please continue to like and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell notification so you can stay up to date on whenever we upload another video. And we'll be talking to you guys real soon. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.